At 3 a.m. on a freezing February night, a man in a $3,000 suit stood gripping the railing of the Brooklyn Bridge, staring down into the black water below. His name was Marcus Thompson, and in exactly 60 seconds, something would happen that would shatter everything he thought he knew about this world. But before I tell you what that was, you need to understand how a man who had everything ended up with nothing left to live for. Because what happened on that bridge wasn't just a story, it was a message. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly who that message was for. It might be for you. Marcus Thompson was the kind of man people envied. At 40 years old, he was a senior partner at one of Manhattan's most prestigious investment banking firms. He lived in a penthouse on the Upper East Side with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Central Park. He drove a matte black Porsche Cayenne. He wore custom Italian suits. His wife Rebecca was beautiful, educated, a former model turned philanthropist. From the outside, Marcus Thompson looked like a man who had grabbed life by the throat and won. But success is a mask. And Marcus had been wearing his for so long that even he had forgotten what was underneath. The truth was, Marcus had been embezzling money from his firm. $2.3 million, siphoned over 18 months through shell accounts and falsified reports. It started small, a desperate move to cover a bad personal investment, but it grew like a cancer. And now the FBI was circling. He could feel them getting closer. Every unknown number on his phone made his hands shake. Every knock on his office door made his heart stop. That wasn't even the worst of it. 3 months ago, he had discovered that Rebecca was having an affair. He found the messages on her phone late one night while she slept. The man was someone from her charity board. Marcus never confronted her. He couldn't, because confronting her would mean admitting that their picture-perfect life was a lie. And Marcus had invested everything into that picture. Without it, he was nothing. So he did what he had always done since he was a boy. He numbed the pain. The prescription pills started as something for anxiety. Then they became something for sleep. Then they became something for everything. He kept a bottle in his desk drawer, another in his car, another in his coat pocket. The one in his coat pocket was full right now, pressing against his chest as he leaned over the railing of the Brooklyn Bridge. Marcus looked down at the East River. The water was black and absolute, like a void waiting to swallow him whole. He thought about the FBI agents who would knock on his office door any day now. He thought about the look on Rebecca's face when she realized their accounts were frozen. He thought about the headlines. Former Wall Street executive arrested for fraud. He thought about his mother, who had worked 2 jobs to put him through college, and how she would sit in her small apartment in Queens and watch her son's mugshot on the evening news. 3 days ago, alone in his corner office at midnight, Marcus had done something he hadn't done in 28 years. He prayed. It wasn't eloquent. It wasn't theological. It was the raw, broken cry of a man who had run out of options. He had whispered into the darkness of that empty office, "God, if you're real, if you're actually there, send me a sign. Any sign. Because I can't do this anymore." The silence that followed felt like confirmation of what he had always suspected. That he was alone. That the faith his grandmother had tried to plant in him as a child had been nothing more than wishful thinking. That the universe was cold and indifferent and didn't care whether Marcus Thompson lived or died. Now, standing on the bridge, he was sure of it. The wind cut through his expensive suit like it was paper. His fingers were numb on the frozen railing. Below him, the river waited. Marcus closed his eyes. He took a breath. He began to let go. And that's when he heard the voice. What happened in the next 60 seconds would defy everything Marcus Thompson thought he knew about reality. And I promise you, by the time you hear what this voice said, you will never see a stranger the same way again. "Marcus, not tonight. Your story isn't finished." The voice came from right beside him. Not behind him. Not from a distance. Right next to him, as if someone had been standing there the entire time. Marcus's eyes flew open and he stumbled backward off the railing, his heart slamming against his ribs. There, leaning calmly against the bridge railing not 3 feet away, was an old man. He was thin and weathered, dressed in a tattered brown coat that looked like it had survived decades of winters. His shoes were worn through at the toes. His beard was long and white, unkempt but somehow dignified. He looked like every homeless man Marcus had ever walked past on the streets of Manhattan without a second glance. But his eyes were something else entirely. They were warm and deep, impossibly deep, like looking into still water that had no bottom. There was no fear in them, no hunger, no desperation, just a calm, ancient knowing that made the hair on the back of Marcus's neck stand straight up. "How do you know my name?" Marcus demanded. His voice cracked. His hands were trembling, and not from the cold. "Who are you?" The old man didn't answer the question. He just smiled, a gentle, patient smile, like a father watching a child try to solve a puzzle. "You're tired, Marcus," he said. His voice was low and steady, almost musical. You've been carrying so much weight. The money, the investigation, Rebecca, the pills in your right coat pocket. You've been telling yourself that this is the only way out. But you're wrong. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. He actually took a step back. The pills in his right coat pocket. Nobody knew about that. Nobody. Not his assistant. Not his therapist. Not Rebecca. He kept them hidden. Always. He rotated bottles so no one would notice how fast they emptied. It was his most carefully guarded secret. I don't know who you are, Marcus said, and now his voice was barely a whisper, but you need to stay away from me. I don't know what kind of scam this is. This isn't a scam, Marcus. And I think you already know that. The old man straightened up from the railing and took a slow step closer. Marcus wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move. It wasn't paralysis exactly. It was more like something deep inside him, something deeper than fear. Deeper than logic, was telling him to stay, to listen. I know about the 2.3 million, the old man said quietly. I know about the shell accounts. I know about the falsified quarterly reports. I know that it started with the Meridian deal in June of last year, and I know that you told yourself it would only be once. Marcus's mouth opened, but nothing came out. The Meridian deal. He had never spoken that name to anyone, not even his lawyer. The details of how it all started were locked inside his own mind. A private shame he carried alone. I know about Rebecca and the man from her charity board, the old man continued. His name is Daniel. They meet at the restaurant on Lexington Avenue, the one with the blue awning. You found the messages on October 14th at 11:47 at night. You were sitting on the edge of your bed and she was asleep beside you, and you didn't cry. You wanted to, but you didn't. You just put the phone down and stared at the ceiling until morning. The date, the time, the blue awning, the detail about not crying. Every single thing was exactly right. Not approximately right. Exactly right. Down to the minute. Down to the detail that Marcus had stared at the ceiling. A detail so small and private that no surveillance camera, no hacker, no private investigator could have ever captured it. It was a detail that existed only inside Marcus Thompson's memory. Who are you? Marcus whispered again. But this time, the question wasn't hostile. It was desperate. It was the question of a man who was realizing that the world he understood, the rational, predictable, explainable world, had just cracked open to reveal something underneath that he was not prepared for. The old man looked at Marcus with those bottomless eyes and said something that Marcus would replay in his mind every single day for the rest of his life. Marcus demanded to know who this stranger was. And the answer he received would change not just his night, not just his year, but the entire direction of his existence. Because what the old man said next wasn't just impossible. It was something only God could know. The old man didn't answer Marcus's question. Instead, he sat down slowly on the cold walkway of the bridge, as if they had all the time in the world. He patted the ground beside him. Sit with me, Marcus. Marcus didn't want to sit. Every rational instinct told him to walk away, to call the police, to do anything other than sit on a freezing bridge at 3 a.m. with a stranger who somehow knew the architecture of his darkest secrets. But his legs folded beneath him almost on their own, and he sat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city hummed distantly around them, a million lives unfolding in a million lit windows, and here on this bridge, suspended between two boroughs and between two worlds, Marcus sat beside a homeless man and waited for something he couldn't name. You were 7 years old, the old man began, his voice soft now, almost tender. The first time your father hit you. It was a Tuesday. He came home from work and dinner wasn't ready because your mother was sick in bed. You were trying to make macaroni and cheese from a box because it was the only thing you knew how to cook. You spilled the boiling water and burned your hand, and when your father walked in and saw the mess, he didn't see a 7-year-old boy trying to take care of his family. He saw a failure. He hit you across the face so hard you fell into the cabinet. And you never told anyone. Not your mother. Not your teachers. No one. Marcus couldn't breathe. The memory was so buried, so deeply entombed beneath decades of achievement and ambition and distraction, that he had almost convinced himself it wasn't real. But it was real. The burn scar was still faintly visible on his left hand. He had told people it was from a cooking accident. He had never told a single soul on earth the truth about that night. You learned something that night, the old man continued. You learned that weakness gets punished. You learned that the only way to survive was to be perfect, to be successful, to never let anyone see you struggling. That lesson has driven every decision you've made for 33 years, Marcus. Every deal you've closed, every dollar you've earned, every lie you've told. You've been running from that kitchen ever since. Tears were streaming down Marcus's face now, silent and hot against the freezing air. He didn't wipe them away. He couldn't move. When you were 12, the old man said, your grandmother took you to Calvary Baptist Church on a Sunday morning. She was wearing her blue dress, The one with the white flowers, the one she wore every Sunday. You sat in the third pew from the back. The choir sang Amazing Grace, and something stirred inside you, something you couldn't explain. After the service, you knelt beside your bed that night and you prayed your first real prayer. Do you remember what you said? Marcus remembered. He remembered with a clarity that shocked him, as if the memory had been preserved in amber somewhere inside his chest, waiting for this exact moment to be opened. You said, "God, please make me rich. Please make me successful. If you make me rich, I promise I'll be happy. I promise I'll be good." The old man paused. You were 12 years old, and you made a deal with God based on the only thing a broken little boy knew to ask for: safety, control, enough money that no one could ever hurt you again. Marcus was sobbing now, deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere below his stomach, somewhere he didn't even know existed. Because the old man wasn't just reciting facts. He was narrating the story that Marcus had never been able to tell, the story beneath the story, the invisible thread that connected the terrified boy in the kitchen to the desperate man on the bridge. God heard that prayer, Marcus. He heard every word. But here's what you need to understand. God didn't answer that prayer the way you expected, not because he didn't care, but because he loved you too much to give you what would destroy you. You asked for wealth as a shield. God wanted to give you something better. He wanted to give you himself. The old man leaned forward. 3 days ago, midnight, your corner office on the 42nd floor. You were alone. Everyone else had gone home. You sat at your desk and you put your head in your hands, and for the first time in 28 years, you prayed again. Do you remember what you said? Marcus nodded, unable to speak. You said, "God, if you're real, if you're actually there, send me a sign. Any sign. Because I can't do this anymore." The old man's eyes glistened. "Marcus, I need you to hear me very carefully. I'm the sign." The words hit Marcus like electricity. Every hair on his body stood up. The air around them seemed to vibrate, to thicken, as if the atmosphere itself was responding to what had just been spoken. Then the old man said something that made Marcus's blood run cold. Something about tomorrow. Something specific. Something impossible. And it would change the course of Marcus's life forever. The old man reached into his tattered coat and pulled out a piece of bread. It was simple, plain, the kind you might find at any shelter or soup kitchen. He broke it in half and offered one piece to Marcus. Marcus took it without thinking. They sat there on the bridge, a millionaire and a homeless man, sharing bread at 3 a.m., and somehow it felt like the most sacred thing Marcus had ever done. "Listen carefully," the old man said. "What I'm about to tell you hasn't happened yet, but it will. Every word of it. And when it does, you'll know that this night was real. You'll know that you're not crazy. And you'll know that the God you gave up on never gave up on you." Marcus wiped his face with the back of his hand. "Tell me. Tomorrow morning at exactly 9:47 a.m., your phone will ring. The call will come from a number you don't recognize, a 312 area code, Chicago. A woman will be on the other end. Her name is Jennifer Chen. She's a federal attorney, but she's not calling about your case. She's calling because someone, an anonymous source, has delivered a package to her office containing documents that prove your partner David Mitchell has been running a separate embezzlement scheme 3 times the size of yours. David has been stealing from the firm for 4 years. The documents will include bank records, wire transfers, and emails that David thought he had permanently deleted. Marcus stared at the old man. "That's not possible." David is the one who set you up, Marcus. The Meridian deal that started your downfall? David orchestrated it. He needed a fall guy, someone whose smaller crimes would draw attention away from his larger ones. You were his insurance policy. When the FBI came knocking, they were supposed to find you and stop looking. Marcus felt dizzy. The Meridian deal. David had been the one who suggested it. David had been the one who said it was foolproof, who had walked Marcus through the mechanics, who had made it seem so easy. Marcus had always wondered why David was so helpful. "Jennifer Chen will offer you a deal," the old man continued. "Full immunity in exchange for your cooperation in the case against David. You will not go to prison, Marcus. Your name will be cleared. In 3 days, the FBI will arrest David at his home in Greenwich at 6 a.m. It will be on every news channel by noon." Marcus shook his head. "This is insane. You can't know this. No one can know something that hasn't happened yet." "You're right," the old man said calmly. "No human can. But Marcus, I need you to understand something bigger than your legal troubles. Your freedom isn't the point. The point is what you do with your second chance. Because God isn't saving you so you can go back to your penthouse and your Porsche and your pills. He's saving you because there are people out there right now, tonight, standing on their own bridges, gripping their own railings, convinced that no one sees them. And you're going to be the one who tells them they're wrong." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. "You'll understand when the time comes. But remember this, the bridge you're standing on tonight isn't your ending. It's your beginning. Every great calling starts in a place of complete brokenness." Moses was a fugitive. David was an adulterer. Paul was a murderer. And Marcus Thompson was a man on a bridge who thought God had forgotten him. The old man stood up slowly. His joints creaked, but he moved with a strange grace, a lightness that didn't match his age. "One more thing, Rebecca. She ended the affair 2 weeks ago. She's been sitting in the living room every night waiting for you to come home, trying to find the courage to tell you the truth. She's terrified of losing you. Tomorrow night, when you walk through your front door, she's going to be sitting on the couch crying. Don't say a word. Just hold her. That's all she needs. That's all either of you need." Marcus thought he was losing his mind. The specificity of everything this man said, the dates, the names, the times, it was beyond any earthly explanation. Either this man was connected to something supernatural, or Marcus had already jumped and this was some kind of dying dream. But what happened the next morning would prove it was neither madness nor dream. It was something far more terrifying and far more beautiful than either. The old man reached inside his coat again and this time pulled out a small book. It was a Bible, old and worn, the leather cover cracked and soft from years of handling, the pages yellowed at the edges. He held it out to Marcus. "Take this," he said. Marcus took the Bible. It was warm, strangely warm, as if it had been sitting in sunlight instead of inside a thin coat on a freezing night. The warmth spread through his fingers and up his arms, and he felt something he hadn't felt in years, maybe decades. Peace. Not the absence of problems, but something deeper, something that existed underneath the problems, like bedrock beneath churning water. "Open it to Hebrews 132. The old man said. Marcus looked down at the Bible in his hands. The pages fell open almost on their own, as if the book knew where it wanted to be read. His eyes found the verse. "Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it." A chill shot through Marcus's entire body. He looked up from the page. The old man was gone. Not walking away. Not fading into the distance. Gone. The bridge stretched out in both directions, empty and silent under the amber glow of the streetlights. There was no one. No footsteps echoing on the walkway. No retreating figure disappearing into the Manhattan skyline. Just Marcus, alone on the bridge, holding a warm Bible in his trembling hands. He spun around. He ran to the Manhattan side of the bridge and looked in every direction. Nothing. He ran back to the Brooklyn side. Nothing. The walkway was completely empty. There was nowhere to hide on the Brooklyn Bridge. It was a straight, open path with railings on both sides and clear sight lines in every direction. A man could not simply vanish. Marcus's legs gave out. He sank to his knees on the cold walkway and pressed the Bible to his chest. The tears came again. But they were different this time. They weren't tears of despair. They were tears of something he didn't have a name for yet, something that felt like being seen for the first time in his entire life. He stayed there until the sky began to lighten, until the first joggers appeared on the bridge, giving confused glances to the man in the expensive suit kneeling on the ground clutching a Bible. He didn't care. The world he had known 12 hours ago, the cold, rational, explainable world, was gone. It had been replaced by something vast and terrifying and wonderful. At 7 a.m., Marcus drove to the closest police precinct. He didn't know exactly why. He told the officer at the front desk that he had been on the Brooklyn Bridge and that he had encountered someone. The officer, looking bored, pulled up the CCTV footage from the bridge cameras. They reviewed the timestamps from 2:30 a.m. to 400 a.m. The footage showed Marcus. It showed him arriving on the bridge. It showed him gripping the railing. It showed him stepping back and sitting down on the walkway, sitting alone, talking to no one, reaching out to accept something from empty air, holding something that appeared out of nowhere, a small book that materialized in his hands as if placed there by invisible fingers. The officer looked at Marcus with concern. "Sir, are you okay? There's no one else on this footage. You were alone the entire time." Marcus stared at the screen. On the footage, he watched himself having a full conversation with empty space. He watched himself take bread from nothing. He watched himself receive a Bible from no one. But the Bible was real. He was holding it in his hands right now. The bread had been real. He could still taste it. The words had been real. Every name, every date, every detail was burned into his memory with perfect clarity. He walked out of the precinct without another word. He sat in his car in the parking lot and opened the Bible again to Hebrews 132. Beneath the printed verse, in handwriting that hadn't been there before, written in ink that shimmered faintly gold, were 5 words. "I was always with you." Marcus closed the Bible. He looked at the clock on his dashboard. It was 9:31 a.m. In 16 minutes, he would know if everything the old man said was true or if he had lost his mind entirely. He stared at his phone and waited. The minutes crawled by. 940. 943. 945. 946. 947 a.m. His phone rang. The screen displayed an unfamiliar number, a 312 area code, Chicago. Marcus's hand was shaking so violently he almost couldn't answer it. He pressed the green button and raised the phone to his ear. Mr. Thompson? My name is Jennifer Chen. I'm a federal attorney, and I need to speak with you about your partner, David Mitchell. Marcus couldn't speak. He sat in his car with the phone pressed to his ear and tears rolling down his face, while Jennifer Chen explained everything the old man had already told him, word for word. An anonymous source had delivered a package to her office that morning. Inside were documents proving that David Mitchell had been embezzling funds from the firm for 4 years, a scheme totaling over $7 million, more than 3 times the size of Marcus's involvement. The documents included bank records from offshore accounts, wire transfer confirmations, and emails that David had believed were permanently erased. Mr. Thompson, Jennifer said, based on our review of these documents, it's clear that you were manipulated into participating in a much smaller aspect of a larger fraud orchestrated by your partner. We're prepared to offer you full immunity in exchange for your cooperation in the case against Mr. Mitchell. Every detail, every single detail matched. The name, the time, the area code, the offer. Marcus gripped the steering wheel with his free hand and pressed his forehead against it. This was real. This was happening. The old man on the bridge, whoever he was, whatever he was, had told him the future with surgical precision. Marcus agreed to cooperate. Over the next 48 hours, he met with federal attorneys and provided testimony about David's operations. He watched as agents built a case that was airtight, overwhelming, undeniable. David had been using Marcus as a shield, a smaller fish designed to attract the investigators' attention while the real predator swam free. Exactly 3 days after the night on the bridge, at 6 a.m. on a cold Friday morning, FBI agents arrived at David Mitchell's $12 million estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. David was arrested in his bathrobe in front of his wife and 2 children. By noon, his face was on every news channel in New York. By evening, Marcus Thompson's name had been officially cleared. All charges dropped. All investigations closed. Marcus sat in his empty office that evening and stared at the city lights through the window. The same window he had stared through 3 nights ago when he whispered that desperate prayer. God, if you're real, send me a sign. He had asked for a sign. God had sent a messenger. But it was what happened that evening at home that broke Marcus in the most beautiful way. He unlocked the door to his penthouse at 8 p.m. The apartment was dim. A single lamp was on in the living room. And there, exactly as the old man had described, Rebecca was sitting on the couch. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her hands were twisting the tissue into shreds. She had been crying for hours. She looked up when she heard the door. Her face crumbled. Marcus, I need to tell you something. I've done something terrible. Marcus didn't say a word. He crossed the room, sat down beside her, and pulled her into his arms. She broke down completely, sobbing against his chest, trying to speak, trying to confess. But he just held her. He held her the way he wished someone had held him when he was 7 years old, standing in a ruined kitchen with a burned hand and a bruised face. He held her the way the old man's words had held him on that bridge, with no judgment, no conditions, just presence. They sat there for over an hour. Rebecca confessed everything about Daniel, about the affair, about how it had started from loneliness and ended in shame. She told Marcus she had broken it off 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks. Exactly as the old man had said. And Marcus, for the first time in his adult life, was honest. He told Rebecca about the embezzlement, about the pills, about the bridge, about the old man who knew everything and then vanished into thin air. Rebecca listened with wide, disbelieving eyes, but when Marcus showed her the Bible, when she saw the golden handwriting beneath Hebrews 132, I was always with you, she pressed her hand to her mouth and began to cry all over again. What do we do now? She whispered. Marcus looked at the Bible in his hands. He thought about the old man's words. God isn't saving you so you can go back to your penthouse and your Porsche and your pills. He's saving you because there are people out there right now standing on their own bridges. We start over, Marcus said. But not for ourselves. For everyone else who's standing where I was standing. What Marcus did next would shock everyone who knew him. And it would prove that when God gives you a second chance, it's never just for you. Within 6 months, Marcus Thompson liquidated nearly everything. The penthouse was sold. The Porsche was sold. The designer watches, the art collection, the wine cellar, all of it. His colleagues thought he had lost his mind. His financial advisor begged him to reconsider. Even Rebecca, who had supported his transformation from the beginning, quietly asked him one night if he was sure. I've never been more sure of anything, Marcus told her. "I spent 40 years building a life that almost killed me. It's time to build something that keeps people alive." He used the money to establish Bridge of Hope Ministries, a non-profit organization dedicated to two things: suicide prevention and homeless outreach. He rented a building in downtown Brooklyn, just 4 blocks from the base of the Brooklyn Bridge. The location was deliberate. It was a reminder, a permanent, physical reminder of where God had found him. The first night the shelter opened, 3 people walked through the door. Within a month, it was 30. Within 3 months, the building wasn't big enough. Marcus found a larger space, then a larger one. Bridge of Hope became known not just as a place to sleep, but as a place to be seen. Every person who walked through those doors was greeted by name. Every person was told the same thing: your story isn't finished. Marcus changed in ways that went beyond charity. He joined a recovery program for his addiction. He started attending church again, the same Calvary Baptist church his grandmother had taken him to at age 12. The blue dress with white flowers was gone now. His grandmother had passed away years ago, but her prayers were not gone. They had been working all along, stored up like seeds in winter soil, waiting for the right season to bloom. He and Rebecca went to counseling together. It was brutal. It was honest. There were nights they screamed at each other and mornings they could barely speak. But they kept showing up. They kept choosing each other. And slowly, like a bone resetting after a break, their marriage began to heal. Not to what it was before, something different, something stronger. A relationship built not on the illusion of perfection but on the reality of grace. Every night, without exception, Marcus walked the Brooklyn Bridge. He walked it at 2 a.m., at 3 a.m., at 4 a.m., the hours when despair is heaviest, when the darkness feels most permanent. He wore a simple jacket and carried 2 things: a thermos of hot coffee and the old Bible the stranger had given him. He looked for people standing too still, people gripping the railing too tight, people staring down at the water with a blank, resolved expression he knew all too well, because it had been his own. When he found someone, he didn't preach. He didn't lecture. He didn't quote statistics about suicide prevention. He just walked up beside them and said, "Rough night?" And then he listened. He listened the way no one had ever listened to him, with no agenda, no judgment, no rush. He offered coffee. He offered his phone number. He offered to sit with them until morning if that's what it took. In his first year on the bridge, Marcus personally intervened in 47 potential suicides. 47 human beings who went home instead of into the water. 47 stories that continued instead of ending. Some of them came to Bridge of Hope afterward. Some never contacted him again. It didn't matter. What mattered was that they were alive. Rebecca joined the ministry full-time. She used her connections in the philanthropic world to raise funding. She organized counseling programs, job placement services, and family reunification support. She had her own testimony now, a story of how betrayal and shame and brokenness had been transformed into purpose. When she spoke at churches and conferences, she often said, "God didn't save my marriage so we could be comfortable. He saved it so we could be useful." 1 year after the night on the bridge, Marcus received an email that stopped him in his tracks. It was from a detective in the NYPD. The detective had been reviewing old CCTV footage from the Brooklyn Bridge as part of a routine investigation. He had found the footage of Marcus from that night, the footage showing Marcus sitting alone, talking to empty air, receiving a Bible from invisible hands. The detective wasn't writing to investigate Marcus. He was writing because his own brother had taken his life from that same bridge 2 years earlier. "I don't know what happened to you that night," the detective wrote, "but whatever it was, I believe it was real. And I need to know more." Marcus invited the detective to Bridge of Hope. That detective became one of the ministry's most dedicated volunteers. But the moment that brought everything full circle, the moment that proved God's plan was bigger than Marcus could have ever imagined, happened on a cold February night, exactly 1 year after the encounter that changed everything. It was 3 a.m. again, February. The wind was bitter on the Brooklyn Bridge, the same cutting cold that had sliced through Marcus's $3,000 suit 1 year ago tonight. But Marcus wasn't wearing a designer suit anymore. He was wearing a simple jacket, the one he wore every night on his walks. The old Bible was in his left hand. The thermos was in his right. He saw him from 50 yards away. A young man, maybe 25, standing at the railing, his hands gripping the metal so tightly that even from a distance, Marcus could see his knuckles had turned white. The young man was thin, wearing a hoodie that was too light for the weather. His head was bowed. He was completely still, the terrible stillness Marcus recognized, the stillness of someone who has made their decision. Marcus didn't run. He didn't shout. He walked steadily, calmly, the way the old man had appeared to him 1 year ago, as if he had all the time in the world. He stopped a few feet from the young man and leaned against the railing casually. "Not tonight, friend. Your story isn't finished." The young man's head snapped up. His eyes were wild, red, filled with the kind of pain that Marcus knew intimately. "What did you just say?" "I said your story isn't finished. And I know that's hard to believe right now. I know you're standing here because you've convinced yourself that there's no other option. I know because 1 year ago tonight, I was standing in this exact spot, gripping this exact railing, and I was sure that the water below was the only answer I had left." The young man stared at Marcus. "You don't know me, man. You don't know what I'm going through." "You're right. I don't know the details, but I know the feeling. I know what it's like when the weight is so heavy you can't breathe. When you've made so many mistakes that you can't see how any of them can be fixed. When you've looked at every possible path forward and they all lead to more pain. I know that feeling. I lived in that feeling. And I need you to know that the feeling is lying to you." Marcus told the young man his story. All of it. The embezzlement, the addiction, the crumbling marriage, the bridge, the old man who appeared from nowhere and knew everything. The prophecies that came true down to the minute, the vanishing, the Bible, the golden handwriting. The young man listened, first with skepticism, then with shock, then with something that looked like the first fragile flicker of hope Marcus had seen in decades of broken eyes. "That really happened to you?" the young man asked. "I have the Bible in my hand right now." Marcus held it out. "Open it to Hebrews 132. The young man opened the old, worn Bible with trembling fingers. He read the verse. Then he saw the golden handwriting beneath it. "I was always with you." His jaw dropped. He ran his finger over the shimmering letters. They were real. They were tangible. They were impossible. "What's your name?" Marcus asked. "Tyler." "Tyler, I'm not going to pretend I have all the answers. I'm not going to tell you everything will be easy. I'm not going to promise you the pain disappears overnight. But I'm going to tell you something that someone told me on this exact bridge 1 year ago. God sees you. Right now, right here, in the worst moment of your life. You are not invisible. You are not forgotten. The fact that I'm standing here, in this spot, on this night, saying these words to you, that's not a coincidence. There are no coincidences." Tyler's grip on the railing loosened. His hands dropped to his sides. The tears came then, the raw, uncontrollable tears of a dam breaking, and Marcus did what the old man's presence had done for him. He stood there. He didn't rush. He didn't preach. He simply refused to leave. They sat on the bridge walkway until sunrise. Tyler told Marcus everything. The failed business, the mountain of debt, the girlfriend who left, the family who stopped calling, the eviction notice taped to his apartment door. Marcus listened to every word, and when Tyler was finished, Marcus said, "Come with me. I know a place." Tyler moved into Bridge of Hope Ministries that morning. Within 6 months, he had completed the program, found employment, and begun rebuilding his life. Within a year, Tyler became a full-time counselor at the shelter. Every night, he walks the Brooklyn Bridge alongside Marcus, carrying a thermos of coffee and a heart full of the kind of compassion that can only come from someone who has been pulled back from the edge. Today, Bridge of Hope has helped over 2,000 people. Marcus and Rebecca are still together, still serving, still walking the bridge at 3 a.m. The old Bible sits in a glass case in the lobby of the shelter, open to Hebrews 132, the golden handwriting still shimmering beneath the verse. Every person who walks through the door sees it. Every person asks about it. And every time, Marcus tells the story. He always ends it the same way. "I don't know if that man was an angel. I don't know if he was a vision. I don't know if God bent the laws of physics to put him on that bridge, or if heaven itself opened up for 60 minutes on a February night to save one broken man. I don't have the theology to explain it. But I know this: I was alone, and then I wasn't. I was hopeless, and then I wasn't. I was about to die, and then someone said 6 words that changed everything." Not tonight. Your story isn't finished. If you're watching this right now, I need you to hear something. This message reaching you, right now, today, in this moment, is not an accident. It is not a coincidence. It is not a random algorithm. Out of millions of videos, out of billions of moments, this is the one that found you. And if you're standing on your own bridge tonight, whether that bridge is loneliness, addiction, grief, shame, fear, or despair, hear the same words that were spoken on the Brooklyn Bridge at 3 a.m. to a man who had given up completely. Not tonight. Your story isn't finished. God sees you. He has always seen you. And He is not done with you yet. If this story touched something inside you, press that like button. Not for the algorithm, but as a declaration that you believe God still intervenes, that angels still walk among us, that no one is too far gone to be found. Subscribe to this channel because God has more impossible stories to tell, and I believe the next one might be yours. Comment "My story isn't finished" below if you needed to hear this today. And if you know someone who is struggling right now, someone standing on their own bridge, share this video with them. You might be the angel they've been praying for. Not tonight. Your story isn't finished. It's just beginning.